Today is the 19th day of the month of Tishrei, otherwise known as the 5th day of Sukkot. We will be finishing off chapter 98, discussing the laws of Yom Tov of holidays, going from paragraph 33 through the end, paragraph 37, and we'll be beginning chapter 99, discussing the laws of Muksa on holidays. In chapter 99, we'll be doing the first two paragraphs. Chapter 98, paragraph 33. The laws of what's called refuah in Hebrew, of taking medicine, of different healing practices when one is ill, are quite complicated on Shabbos. When we get to the laws of Shabbos, we're going to go into it in more detail, but we're discussing now Yom Tov, the holiday. So the thing to know is that generally on Shabbos, if one has a small headache, a slight heartburn, according to halacha, there's not much they could do about it on Shabbos. They're not supposed to take a medicine or any sort of remedy for it. Unless it's like a food, if they have heartburn, they could drink some milk or soy milk, that would be fine. But any sort of medication would be a problem. Parenthetically, if they'd be so sick that they'd have to lay down in bed, they'd be feeling so unwell, then they could start taking medication. And it goes without saying that anytime somebody's life is in danger, then everything goes. Our lives override any Shabbos prohibition, no matter how severe the Shabbos prohibition is. So, of course, that goes without saying, no matter whether it's Shabbos, a holiday, etc. But back to that level we're talking about. Somebody has a slight heartburn, a headache. It's uncomfortable. It might even be a little bit painful, but doesn't affect their action. They don't have to lay down in bed. On Shabbos, they can't take any medication for it. And also the first day Yom Tov, they cannot take any medication for it. However, on the second day of the holiday, out in the diaspora, outside Israel, when we have 2 days of the holiday, on the second day, they're allowed to take medication for it, and they can even transgress rabbinical prohibitions to take care of the issue. This obviously requires knowledge of what prohibition is rabbinical, what prohibition is biblical, but rabbinical prohibitions are able to be transgressed in order to take care of a headache, heartburn, something small, which is causing them discomfort, but it doesn't cause them to have to lay down. Something to note is that we're going to see this also coming up in chapter 99. Rosh Hashanah is different. The second day of Rosh Hashanah has the same status of the first day. So therefore, even though normally on the second day of a holiday, you could take a medication and transgress rabbinical prohibitions to take care of a minor illness, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, you cannot. Paragraph 34. Normally on Shabbos, we're not allowed to carry outside in the street without an Eruv. Again, we'll discuss more of those rules when we get to the laws of Shabbos. On Yom Tov, however, on a holiday, we do not need an Eruv to carry. Certainly with regards to food, if we're doing anything for cooking, to prepare food, we could carry without any issues. And also, in regards to carrying any other things that we need for Yom Tov, for the holiday, no Eruv is needed. We're allowed to carry outside without any issues. The exception to this is carrying for a non-holiday related purpose. If there's something we want to carry having nothing to do with the holiday, that we're not allowed to carry. Unless, of course, there's an Eruv, then it would have the same rules as Shabbos. Even when carrying for food, if one has a lot to carry, they should try doing it in smaller trips if possible. We're not supposed to go out and carry these huge boxes filled with food outside on Shabbos because it starts looking like we're doing something for commercial use instead of residential use. However, if you're having a lot of company over and you do need to carry large boxes, then it's okay to do it. Paragraph 35. All of these leniencies that we've been talking about in regards to preparing food on the holidays apply only to preparing food for human consumption. These leniencies do not apply to food that we're preparing for animals, whether it be animals, farm animals, or even pets. So no cooking, no doing any of these 39 Shabbos prohibitions in order to prepare food for our animals. Paragraph 36. All of these leniencies that we have with food preparation on holidays only apply to Jews. We are not allowed to cook for non-Jews on the holiday. As a matter of fact, the rabbis are so concerned that we might end up cooking for non-Jews that we have over as guests, as company on the holidays, that they made a decree that we are not allowed to invite non-Jews over to our houses for meals, at least on holidays. Paradoxically, it comes out, if the holiday falls out on Shabbos, when we can't or we're not allowed to cook at all, even for our own sake, then there's no problem inviting over a non-Jew to join in a meal. However, if the holiday falls out during a weekday, when we're allowed to cook for ourselves, then we're not allowed to invite over non-Jews to join us for a meal, because as a concern, we may end up cooking for the non-Jew as well. So even if we have all the food prepared before the holiday began, still no inviting non-Jews over for a holiday meal. If a non-Jew showed up at our home, they came and we didn't invite them, then we're allowed to serve them food, but we have to be very careful they're not cooking more food for them. To bring this point home a little bit, there was once a fellow who was in the middle of converting to Judaism who wanted to join us for the Seder. That year, the first Seder was Shabbos. So I told him, for the first Seder, you could join us because that's Shabbos, so this whole issue of inviting non-Jews doesn't apply. The second Seder was Saturday night, and therefore we're allowed to cook on Saturday night, and so therefore you can't invite a non-Jew over to join you for a meal. So I said to him, second Seder, I'm sorry you can't join us, but first Seder, because of Shabbos, is not a problem. Paragraph 37. Just like we can't cook for a non-Jew on Yom Tif, on the holiday, we also are not allowed to carry for the sake of a non-Jew on a holiday. Now remember, if there's an Erev in the neighborhood, then you could carry for the non-Jew because there's no prohibition being transgressed at all. Chapter 99. This chapter discusses the laws of Muktzah on Yom Tif. There are many items that we're not supposed to move at all on Shabbos. Not only are there things that we can't do, there are things we're not even supposed to move. An example of that is an item that the main use of this item is a Shabbos prohibited use. For example, a pencil. The job of a pencil is to write with. We're not allowed to write on Shabbos. Therefore, pencils are what's called Muktzah on Shabbos. We're not allowed to move them. These laws are pretty technical and detailed, and we're going to discuss them more when we get to the laws of Shabbos. But in regard to applying them to Yom Tif, to holidays, generally, if it's not allowed to be moved on Shabbos, it's not allowed to be moved on the holidays as well. There will be some clear exceptions. Because of the exceptions of things that we could do on holidays, there will be things that will have forbidden uses on Shabbos, but not on a holiday. Therefore, on the holiday, it won't be muktzah. For example, firewood. On Shabbos, we're not allowed to add wood to the fire, so firewood is considered something which its primary use is forbidden. You're not allowed to move it on Shabbos. On a holiday, because you're allowed to cook on holidays, you could add wood to a fire on holidays. Therefore, on holidays, this wood is not considered something whose primary function is forbidden. And therefore, clearly can move firewood on holidays. It would not be muktzah. So paragraph 1. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that generally speaking, anything which is muktzah, which we're not allowed to move on Shabbos, we cannot move on holidays either. If somebody has a store and has produce set aside for sale, that would be considered muktzah because he didn't have in mind to use it over Shabbos at all. This was set aside for sale. We don't sell things on Shabbos. This fruit, this produce, is not allowed to be used on Shabbos. The same would apply on a holiday. You're cooking, you need some more food, you can't go into your store, either attach your house down the block, whatever, and pick up some extra produce to bring home to use in your cooking for your company because that produce is set aside to sell, not to be used on the holiday. There is a slight exception, says the Kitzur, that if you have something that is meant to sell a small amount over a long period of time, you don't sell a lot at once, then you could use that, even though it was set aside for sale, you still could use that on the holiday. Paragraph 2. 20 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, I'd say paragraph 2 would not be so relevant to us, wouldn't be so practical for us at least, and therefore I'd say we should skip it. However, in 2024, I think it's becoming relevant and practical once more. That's because paragraph 2 discusses what do you do with eggs that were laid on Shabbos or on Yom Tif? Are you allowed to use them or not? In 2024, it's becoming more and more common for people to raise chickens in the backyard, and therefore, this is once more a very practical law that is worthwhile for us to discuss. So the rule is that any egg which was laid on a holiday cannot be eaten on the day it was laid. It is muktzah. You have to leave it where it is. If you are nervous about it being crushed or broken, you could put a bowl over it to protect it, but you're not allowed to move it. The next day, however, you are able to use that egg. There are a few exceptions to this leniency. of the next day being able to use it. Number one is, if the first day is Shabbos, you cannot use it the next day. Number two is, on Rosh Hashanah, in some aspects, instead of considering it two separate days, day number one of Rosh Hashanah, day number two of Rosh Hashanah, we consider it one long day, and therefore an egg that was laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah cannot be used on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. In addition, let's say you have Shabbos, and then Sunday and Monday are the holidays. You cannot use an egg that was laid on Shabbos, you cannot use it on Sunday, but you would be able to use it on Monday. And also, let's say the holiday is Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. An egg that was laid on Friday, you cannot use on Shabbos. An egg that was laid on Thursday, you could use on Friday without a problem. Again, assuming it's not Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, in that case, if Rosh Hashanah is Thursday, Friday, and then Shabbos is following that, you would not be able to use the egg that is laid even on Thursday until after Shabbos is over. This concludes today's learning. Have a wonderful day, see you tomorrow, and happy egg collecting.